All right, this is the Founders Pack Wolfcast. My guest today is Colin Chen from Kopia. Did I say that correctly?
Yep, Kopia.
Okay, you've got one of the easier names and company names. So thanks for joining me. We were talking before, and you have a bit of a unique story. You guys got accepted into Y Combinator, but there's a little twist there, right? So I guess first of all, who is Colin, and what is Kopia, and what the heck happened at Y Combinator?
Yeah, I guess, the whole story of how we all started was really we were kind of two kids in school. Previously, my co-founder and I both had built startups in the school. So I kind of built an e-commerce order management platform that, really was just bootstrapped, but we had, over 1.5 million in ARR and over 26 customers. And so, I think we both knew that we want to start something and build something bigger. So we started working on something while at school. It was really late to apply to the batch, but we kind of just decided we would do it. We had been working on this thing for like a month, shipped like an MVP, had a couple customers. We we didn't think we were going to even get considered, considering how late it was. But by the grace of God, got an interview, and I think for some reason our partners, I guess, really liked us. But when we got the call, they said, hey, we really like you guys, but we're not so sure about your idea. We're not so sure it's big enough. But we'd love to fund you, and we'd love for you guys to come and work on this or really work on anything.
Really
and so
interesting.
it's been a journey since then, but yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
So it's interesting, so obviously they were interested in the team and that you guys had some sort of an idea, but felt that you could pivot. And what's your co-founder's background?
Yeah, so my co-founder, his background was he had built this really study tool for students. He was also in high school, but he was homeschooled. So he wanted to essentially have an app kind of keep accountability, but with with people his age. And he scaled that to, thousands of users, eventually getting acquired by a company. And so him and I both, started companies in high school, both were acquired. They weren't big positions, right? They're not splashy, huge venture-backed companies, but I think it proved that we could build things that people wanted to use, and that was quite cool.
Yeah, super impressive. I think a lot of people are sitting in high school waiting around for permission, right? So I think there's this like over accreditation idea. So I think that, that would be interesting to me if I were talking to you guys. First of all, that you're like, no, we're just going to do our thing. It's not like we're going to. I always contend that if you meet someone when they're 14, you meet them when they're 18, there's not much difference. Probably that you can tell if they're smart or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've always, I think I've always been someone who just wanted to do things, right? And I think I got very lucky to fall in something that, worked. But it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, so then now just to clarify, you are in the current batch, which is winter 24, but you originally got into 23, or you did 23?
So we did 23.
Okay.
And so we did 23, but really the experience was a lot of pivoting. We worked on like 8 different products, kind of talked to like hundreds of people in different roles to see what problems they had. And I think I just learned a lot about, what it means to actually build a kind of venture scalable company, right? Like, what is something that you would work on for 5-10 years of your life if this is going, if it goes well? And I think we ultimately, some ideas are good, some ideas are bad. But I don't think we were the right people to build any of them, because I think we looked at each other and we were like, why are we building this, right? Like, we don't understand the people that we're building for. We don't particularly care about the problem. We never felt it, and so why should we be building this? And so I think it's that's what we learned, and we then went on this journey of like what do we build then? And so that was quite an interesting time.
So, and then you've landed on Kopia, and that is the trajectory.
So we kind of decided after a while that uh, that I wanted to do e-commerce. Calix, who was my original co-founder, he actually he went to go back to school, and so I had the decision of like, do I keep going? Do I not keep going? At this time, we really had no idea, and now no co-founder. And I think I just knew I wanted to build something, and so went back to e-commerce because it was a space that I knew, better than anything else, really. And brought on one of my friends from Stanford, and we kind of just began hacking e-commerce, which slowly, after kind of iteration, speaking to people, speaking to kind of brands, came to the idea of Kopia, which is, what we're building now is essentially an AI virtual try-on experience for clothing brands.
Okay. I mean, we've seen some versions of this in the past. What makes this different, and why you guys winning?
Yeah. I love this question. I think it's something that has been attempted. Many smarter people than I have attempted this with much more money and much more resources. I frankly think if you look at all of the products in the past, there's a reason why consumers today don't use any of this technology. It's because it doesn't look that great. And I think that was a limitation of the technology, right? A lot of companies in the past were using GANs, we're using 3D modeling, which could get accurate, kind of like accurate try on, but not realistic. And so consumers, did you really want to see a grayed out mannequin that you could do 3D? Probably not. But what we're really excited about is, with generative AI and diffusion, you can create some really realistic images, as we've seen with like Midjourney and other kind of image generation tools. And to me, it seems like, AI has allowed us, and diffusion models has allowed this thing to finally happen. And we're kind of seeing the beginnings of that with what we're doing.
I'm just thinking out loud because, like, if I bought clothes online, and it's because I see it and I'm now comfortable, and I wonder if, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, would I have been as comfortable? Now it's just looking at something, knowing I picked the right size and it's good. And now you're adding a dimension to it. So I think that, first there's that comfort that's already, we've crossed that chasm. People are comfortable buying clothes online. And that way, it seems like what you've accomplished is come up with something that actually lets them see accurately what they will look like in the clothes.
Yeah, I think how I think about it is, my behavior, and I would say, most people I talk to, it's this idea of clothing is probably the hardest thing to buy online, maybe besides a car. But clothing is so personal. It's such an emotional decision when you purchase something, and it's such a personalized decision. And there's so many factors, go into when you buy something, right? There's the size, there's the actual fitting, there's the material, there's the color, and all these things could look great on someone else, but could look bad on you. And so the idea of what we ultimately came down to was like, there's a reason why, if you look at e-commerce sales, they lack in proportion of e-commerce transactions to retail, they lack in proportion to almost every other category. And so the idea is that, we believe that people are not as comfortable buying clothing online as they should be, right? The convenience, the optionality, like I should be buying everything online really because I have no time anyways. I should never be going in person. And yet the past few times I bought clothes has all been in person.
Oh.
And I think, to me, it's this idea of, frankly, there's a lot of factors, but I think what it comes down to is this idea of like, when you go in store and try something, when you go in store, you see something you like, you try it on, there's some sort of like moment where you see yourself in it that invokes this emotion that makes you, make a rational decision to buy something, right? You're buying something you don't really need. You're spending money that you don't need to be spending. It's a rational decision, but yet you're doing it because you're really happy or you really love what's on you. And I think that's the thing that's been lacking with e-commerce, right? You seeing something on a model, you seeing an image of that item on a model of someone else, that doesn't really invoke any emotion with me, right? Like I don't really see, I don't really have the same kind of feeling I have as the purchase person. And so we think if we can show you what this item looks like on you, even if it's not 100% sizing accurate or physically accurate, if we can show you visually what this would look like in a realistic way, we believe that it might invoke those same emotions and actually spur e-commerce growth more than we ever kind of imagined.
Interesting. All right. So, and then who typically are your customers that you're going after? Is it kind of anyone with Shopify that's selling clothing, or is it?
Yeah, so we do both Shopify, and if you have a custom site on some other platform, it's a really easy integration. Shopify is probably the easiest. But yeah, we're still working on building out the early technology and piloting with brands, and we're still pretty early. But main customers right now are like Shopify brands, anywhere doing anywhere in 5 to 15 million in revenue is kind of our sweet spot.
Okay, great. All right. Well, if you could offer other founders only one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think my advice, I can't give any advice on how to build a company because I haven't really done one successfully yet. I think my biggest advice is like, is this really what you want to do? Right. I think building a venture-backed company, right? There's different ways to build companies, right? You can build, my first company was a bootstrapped company. We're seeing a lot more of those lately, which I actually think is great for the environment. But I think if you want to build a venture-backed company, you have to really understand, like, what does this mean? The outcome is like, you have to build $1 billion company, which means the idea has to be big enough to be there. And you have to really understand that's incredibly hard. Do you really want to do that? Right. Because, there's a lot of times where, I think I could have easily quit. Even today, things are not easy. And I could say, I can go back to school or go get a job somewhere. But this is what I want to do. And I know that. And I think my advice to people is figure out, why you want to do it and if it's what you want to do.
That's really good advice. One thing that we'd like to understand is, a lot of people talk about Y Combinator and the big value of that is the community. So what has the role of partnerships and or community been in your success so far?
I think it's so cliche, but I think it's changed my life. And even in so, if you take away the company, right? Like we pivot, we've been and we're not, we're building kind of software for brands or software for consumers. And so, YC, the community is great for tech companies, but not so for retail brands. The reason why I think it changed my life is, I think there's this certain, going to like, why do you want to be founder and how do you know that this is what you want to do? I think, when you join the YC community, to me, I met, successful founders. And I think as a young kid who always looked up to these people, I always thought of them as like smarter than I, or, genius level IQ, or they were just different. Right. But I think what I realized by talking to them is like, these are normal people, right? They're incredibly smart, they're really hardworking, but they had really just a vision of the future they wanted to build and were like ultra determined to do it. And anybody almost could have that trait about them. And so what I kind of realized was like, this is possible. Like, they're more similar to me and you than any of us think. And building something that changes the world is not impossible. It is definitely possible. And I think that kind of mindset shift to me was like incredibly profound. And definitely has changed the way I view how I want to live my life.
Love it. That is very exciting to hear. I love that ethos, and it's great to hear how that's impacted your own personal life too. All right, the final thing is when we have someone interesting, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time. I haven't done an interview in a little while, so I might even be rusty and I'm probably struggling with technology, which is bizarre because I'm really strong in that area. But I want to thank you for taking
the great.
All right, so when we have someone interesting on the Founders Pack Wolfcast, we actually like you to nominate another interesting person. A lot of YC nominate other YC founders. Who would you call and like to nominate as a future guest?
I think so cliche, but any of my two co-founders, so my past co-founder Calix, or my now co-founder Aadi, I think they would, I think give a really interesting perspective on how they think about things.
Amazing. So it's Calix and Aadi?
Yeah, so Calix Wong and then Aadi Nashikkar.
All right, you guys have both been nominated, so we'll reach out to both of you. Colin will connect us. Thank you so much for your time today, Colin. We look forward to following your journey.
Cool. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
One.